Hey there, welcome to SUPlift, a place where ideas meet with resources to create something special. Last week, we had a guest who was very concentrated on sales, growth, and scalability. Today, we have another special guest who is more concentrated on product itself, but of course, he doesn't leave growth and scalability and sales. It's Roope Takala. Hello, Rob. Nice to have you here. We are very grateful.
Hello, and nice to be here.
Okay, so Roope is a founder of Aurora Propulsion. So a company that makes something that I think I don't understand as much. So I would rather you talk more about it. So what does Aurora Propulsion do?
So Aurora Propulsion makes devices that move spacecraft in space. Propulsion systems, that's a technical term, it's in the name, but layman word would be rocket engines. The ones that turn satellites in orbit and make sure that they stay there. And maybe also move to other orbits. Usually they're very small, and we take pride in making everything small or miniaturizing everything. But at the end of the day, it's maybe what I like to call a high-flying business.
So you sell products, right? It's those small propulsion systems, those mini thrusters, as I've read. These are products.
Yes.
They are. All right. And
the products we make.
And tell me, what made you go into a product business?
Well, maybe I'm too simple for services and immaterial stuff, but I'm a mechanical engineer by training. I believe fundamentally people like to fidget. I do. So fidgeting with unmaterial products is difficult. So that's why it's a way I think. It's easier to think of stuff as physical objects, sell them in many ways than creating completely material products. Naturally, of course, when we do have a physical product that is an embodiment of a lot of immaterial assets, a lot of software, a lot of electronics design behind it, but the outcome is quite gratifying when you actually can hold it in your hand and say, this is it. So that's why products.
Okay, and tell me,
at the end of the day, it's easy to sell as well. No, you ship a product and then you send a bill.
Of course. And tell you, how did you validate your product? I mean, how did you know that this product is possible to be sold?
Well, I spent a lot of time in business development in a large corporation, and we were looking at this kind of technologies. And 20 years of experience of picking out the cherries from a pie of different ideas, and this just came across as one of the ones that has the best growth potential I have ever seen. I have been working in the mobile phone industry, so we sold a lot of stuff. So in this one, the speed of growth that I'm seeing in space industry is just phenomenal. It's just off the charts, and it also is quite traditional in the sense that it combines all faculties of engineering, which of course is a personal challenge. We need to learn about mechanics, electronics, chemistry, rocket science, a little bit of software to go with it, and then of course services afterwards. But those are all bundled into this physical product, which is quite nice.
And before going into the Aurora Propulsion, you said that you worked in a, let's say, phone and technology company. Tell me, what did happen that you decided to change the corporate life into your own business life?
Well, nothing much. Maybe it's a chance. In corporate lives, you have changes of phase. You move from one job to another, and you grow. And I was at one of those turning points, and being a little bit rocket crazy from 5-year-old onwards, probably earlier, and life having worked for 25 years in corporate inside, it was time to try something else. I had all the networks. I had pretty much understanding on how to run a business, good contacts to bring in new people into the company, and it just felt right, the right time, jump out and do it for myself. And yes, the speed of startup world is always intriguing. In a corporation, you spend 3-4 years making PowerPoints before you come up with some funding just to test drive it a little bit. In that time, you actually fly a rocket in the startup world. So that's really interesting to see that. And of course, this is not the first startup I have founded or have been working with. So it wasn't that scary of a move to jump out for me. And the drill was pretty straightforward. There are certain things you need to do: get the team, get funding, do the business plans, and those were not that much of an objective. So it wasn't a learning process for those. It was a learning process for actually getting this technology up into above the clouds, I guess is the term here.
And when you actually changed your corporate life to, let's say, your own business, what was the biggest change? What was the biggest surprise, maybe, or the biggest obstacle that you've had within this transition?
Well, I guess the first one was that I didn't have to ask anybody for a decision on anything. Just look in the mirror and decide, and off we go. And it did take some time to get over the fact that you don't have to have a committee to decide. Of course, we were a small company, so there was no committee to be set up either. But of course, at the same time, we tried to collect a bunch of like-minded people to help out on different things, act as a sounding board for ideas, and shoot stupid ideas down, because the faster you go, the more stupid ideas you get, and unless you have some friends and experts that you to discuss the topics with, it's really difficult sometimes to see the forest from the trees.
I understand. And could you tell me, as a founder or as a beginner founder, some time ago, what was your biggest success and also the biggest mistake you've made as a beginner founder?
Well, when I started off, the first mistake that I did, and probably every founder does, is you forget that you need to talk to everybody all the time. Startup business is a communication business. You will not get funding if you don't talk about it 24/7. To everybody outside the company. There are no secrets in startup business. Your only asset is the fact that you move so fast that nobody can catch up. And at certain point, when you've done enough talking, then you start collecting these experts and funders and key employees around you, and that of course is the key issue. And in this not being my first company, I already had a good idea that this is what you need to do. But yes, I have blundered on that in the past. What was the biggest success was, I guess, finding a team who was like-minded and let's say decided to look past the fact that it's impossible to do. So just getting on with it. And in many startups, the task that you are taking on it's just daunting. If you start analyzing it, you get really scared, and then you get locked up and nothing moves. You have to get into a mindset that, no, let's start here and start doing something and then fix it when it's broken. And because when you start eating an elephant, you can't swallow it in one piece. You take it piece by a time, and you have to select which piece to start off with. And usually it's the wrong one, so you spit it out and pick another one. So this is the way you have to start going. There is just no way of doing everything, and you have to live with the uncertainty that everything is half done. And there, I think we did a really good job. We had a team that was bold enough not to think of the daunting task, but or thinking that it's not possible to do, and just getting on with it. And bit by bit, it became more and more realistic.
Okay, so basically communicating with the world to see what is actually the response of what you want to do, then finding a great team, like-minded team who believes in the project at hand, and at the same time, choosing what to do and not being afraid of making mistakes. I would take it from this.
Absolutely. Making mistakes is your best asset, actually. The only thing is you need to do them really fast. You can spend years and years of doing a computer simulation, analyzing stuff. Then when you build it, it doesn't work. Whereas you could have just built one and tried it and realized it doesn't work and do something else until you find something work and then do the simulation. So you get rid of the uncertainty just by trying things out.
So if I may ask, how many prototypes have you gone through creating Aurora Propulsion?
Probably 10, 15 before we had a functional one. Then we were surprised we actually found something that worked. And then we started building on that concept. Product development, of course, is new. You have to get the big lines correct first, and then you start polishing. And after that, even in the polishing phase, you probably need to do 3, 4, 5 iterations or product generations before you can actually even call it a product. There is an advantage of doing these prototypes more and more advanced one by one. Just every time you call it a product and you take it to a customer, and the customer tells you that, okay, this is good, but those things need to change. And you get feedback. But without showing anything, you can't get any feedback to the level of detail that you need to actually build something.
Okay, so then let's go, because this is actually what I really wanted to talk about, is basically how to create a business out of a product. So firstly, do you create a business, or do you firstly create a product? And how does it work?
Well, of course, you incorporate the business first, because that's the only instrument you can get funded with. But in practice, the first 2-3 years of a company making a product, you are doing product design. You are thinking about what would the customer want. Talk to potential customers. You talk to potential people, or people who have talked to your potential customers, and try to figure out what would be a good sweet spot. And then you make a guess. Let's do this. And then you build it. Then you take it to some potential customers and showcase it. Okay, this is what we built. What do you think? And usually then you get pinpoint feedback on saying, okay, you made this rocket engine, but it's too big, or it's too small. There's not enough thrust. You need a bigger tank. And all those comments are really valuable, because those I can act on. If somebody tells me, I don't like it, there's nothing I can do about that. I can show him a nicer picture and say, do you like this one more? But what I really want from the customer is that, it needs to be shorter, it needs to be longer, bigger tank, this kind of sort of engineering things that can be implemented. And then you go back to the drawing board and look at it and say, okay, if we do those tweaks, then it starts to look that way. Then you do stuff in a way that you look at, okay, we have 3 customers. One wants a big tank, one wants a small tank, but they all want this thruster. So you actually split the product into 3 modules, saying big tank, small tank, thruster, and then you have some kind of plug-in module, meaning that you can actually supply with the same work you do multiple different customers, or some kind of tuning capabilities. No, if one wants the thrust to go this way, another one that way, then you put a gimbal on it that actually changes the direction. So there you try to engage your potential customers, your potential funders, quite early. And yes, of course, when you have a physical product, it's also easy to go to some funding agency and say, look, this is what we made. We want to sell it. We need $500,000 to develop it to that stage. And it's a lot more concrete when you give it to somebody and say, hold it now. And they start looking at, yeah, maybe this could be sold. Of course, they ask questions like, who do you want to sell it to, and what are their needs? But it's a lot easier than with just a PowerPoint presentation saying that we have this wonderful concept.
Because I know that Aurora Propulsion secured a funding, the seed round, the funding deal. Could you tell me, did you go with for the funding with just a prototype with then kind of an MVP, or was it already a developed product with traction?
So it was the funding round we got was a seed one, so definitely it's more of a prototype or a minimum feasible or viable product, or close to a minimum viable product that you move at that stage. Yes, we had talked to customers and we had some initial traction as well, but typically seed rounds don't expect you to have that traction yet, because that's the whole point of the round, to get you to the point where you get the traction. Of course, seed rounds with VCs is one, but even before that, most countries in Europe, at least, have different kinds of non-equity instruments that are utilized, be it from European Space Agency or some kind of innovation support in the countries. That, of course, we have been using as well. That gave us the opportunity to create that minimum viable product, or almost minimum viable product, before we went to a larger investor round. And that definitely helped a lot, because then we had something to show for. But when you go for a round, it's a lot of talking again. I think we talked to probably 200 different investors in the process, and what you want to do in those discussions, you explain that what you do and how enthusiastic you're about it, how great your team is, and then you ask the guy that, okay, is it your cup of tea? And they usually say that no, we actually invest in software. And then we ask that, okay, that's fine, we understand that, but do you have friends? Who do you think we should pitch this to? And that's the way you actually start moving around the scene of investors in Europe. The ones that are on the internet, they are crowded. The ones that don't have an internet page are the interesting ones, because then you dig down into the core investors who look at specific technologies. We have 2 investors who are investing specifically in space tech, which narrows down the number of companies who will be contacting them in the first place. And of course, we want to dig them out. The other point, of course, for finding investors is try to go broad. You need investors that are high tech. If it's a tech company that focus on the technology you're doing, usually there's only 5 to 10 of them in the world, because, okay, depending on the technology type, but even in software, they focus on different types of software, and that means that you need to find the right ones. But then you also need investors that can take you to A round, B round, and further down the road, which are more financial oriented, and they will come in and follow these tech lead investors. So building a consortia or a group of investors that have different roles in the funding process of the company from here to the future, as well as for for supporting each other with different kinds of assets. One might be tech savvy, the other one might be savvy with banking industry or export industry, and they create this kind of a mutual support network for each other, but also for the company. And usually it's quite good to have investors who want to learn the industry. so something, a mutual learning experience in many directions.
So you managed to find a VC, a investor that actually wanted to invest in space tech and also wanted to learn together with you.
Well, I also have to say that over the last 20 years, I have been talking to investors in general. This one was by far the easiest round. I actually had investors contact me instead of the other way around. And that didn't happen ever before. I don't know, did it happen because of the investment environment in the world being much more active? Or is it because the industry we're in is growing at such a fast pace that everyone's scrambling to get on board? But it happened, and it was also, of course, a huge energy boost for us after talking to tens and tens of investors, and then we get calls incoming towards us saying, "I'm an investor. I'd like to invest in your company." It gave us this feeling that yes, I guess we are doing something right. So sometimes you get lucky, and we did, and regardless of that, when you talk to investors, you still need to get lucky because there are a million reasons they won't invest. Even if it would be a perfect fit for their portfolio, it might be that they just invested, or they have 5 people working for the investor and they have 6 cases ongoing. They are scrambling with the works, which means that they're not taking any new cases on board. So that there's many things that might go wrong, and you just have to be happy with it and not worry about the fact that this specific investor right now couldn't jump on your rocket. but then you just say that, okay, can we ping you later on? We probably have a good match, and half a year later they might have the time. There will be another funding round coming on, definitely. Especially hardware industry, it takes 3, 4, 5 years to actually get the actual business running, so that it covers itself. The more complex the technology, the more you need to pile up the investments in the beginning to be able to cover for your own costs. But typically in hardware, once you get past the fact that you've developed the product and you start getting customers, the deals are quite big in size. So the payback might be much more than you get in some immaterial industries.
So you didn't get discouraged and you knocked to all the possible doors you could. Well, not with Aurora Propulsion. Somebody knocked to your doors actually, but the previous
we knocked on doors
ones
as well, and you have to love your own case so much that you just want to talk more about it. And yes, every discussion you learn something, and you get a new corner. Okay, I have to think about that part as well.
I understand. And I would like to also touch on the intellectual property. Because when I was preparing for our interview today, I noticed that you hold 7 patents and 1 pending from what I saw. Could you tell me, when you create products and you create business based on products, how important is to file for the patent? How important is to have this patent, and when should a product founder actually go for it?
So those are very good questions, and guideline from 20 years of experience is that you go for a patent very early. You create a broad patent in the beginning, and then in the later stages of the product development, you create sort of more detailed, smaller descriptions of certain parts of the product. You need to create this kind of a cloud of patents around your product to protect it from many directions. Why would you do this? Well, number one, you can pretty much count the value of one one patent in your it basically raises the value of your company by 100,000 or 200,000 euros per patent in terms of valuation. So it gives you some, and it's something that you can jump on very early in the development phase. So it's a way to create value into the company. It's a way to put a stake in the ground, even though you're not selling products yet, because as said, might take 3-4 years to actually get a successful or start getting the market success of those products. So with patents, you can put a stake in the ground, say this is what I'm doing. It also gives the investors a feeling that you're protected. You have a freedom to operate in this area that you're doing, so nobody else is going to copy the product. And depending a little bit on what your product is if it's a mechanical product, it's really simple to copy. You just buy one, take a measurement device, ruler, and start measuring it and build the same thing again. So you do need the protection. If it's a software product, then it might be a little different, early on, because software you can earlier is better. And for other products like software, you don't necessarily need a patent, because then you don't deliver the source code. So you cannot re-engineer, for instance, embedded software from a chip. It just doesn't happen. Or if it's something that, if for instance it's a mixture of materials that you do in a specific way in your manufacturing process, that might not require a patent because it's impossible to copy. That manufacturing process is behind locked doors, or the recipe. Coca-Cola doesn't patent its recipe because they don't have to. They keep it in a locked cabinet. So there are different technologies that require more patenting. And for instance, that these physical products we do, the physical part of those products definitely is something that is advantageous to protect, just to be safe from copycats. And if everything goes perfectly, you do get a successful copycat, you can actually send them a licensing bill on a monthly basis.
I understand.
So that's the value of a patent in general, and in our industry, because it's very much hardware driven. It's definitely important.
And that's very important. I understand. And when it comes to supply and demand, so you create a product, and do you create a lot of this product, or do you create it based on orders and you don't try to store it as much?
It depends on the product. So in our industry, there's a tradition of that is similar to what happened in the car industry before Henry Ford came along. So you make a single car at a time in a garage, and this is how space industry has been working. Now we have companies like SpaceX or OneWeb who are making hundreds of satellites a year. So they actually start needing a delivery chain. So the industry is moving a little bit towards the mass production type of processes. For a small company, there is one but in the story. If you have a product that is worth 100,000, you can't afford to make 100 of them into your storage compartment, your department, or a storehouse, because that's like 10 million worth of money standing in a store. So what we've done is we have our simpler products. Those we are actually now designing to be made so that we have a batch in storage. We can ship it off the next day. And for the more complex products, which will also have more customer feedback saying, could you tweak this? Could we tweak that? In those cases, it's more worthwhile to have not the whole product, but maybe the core components, for instance, in our case, the thrusters pre-built. And then we just take those and make the assembly according to the customer specifications. Maybe we put a bigger tank or a smaller tank, or maybe we put 6 thrusters instead of 4 thrusters into the package. But the thrusters we make ahead of time, and then the package is done on order. So the answer to the question is not simple. It depends, but it's very much driven by the volumes of delivery, as well as the how much money you put into the warehouse.
Yeah, that's true. So it depends on the product, and in your case, you create a little bit or the main components needed, and then whatever the customer actually needs is what creates the final product itself.
Although I have to say that we are now looking to have more of these off-the-shelf products, because especially with our new launch of a collision avoidance system that is that size of matchbox size product, that is a reasonable cost item, so we can afford to make batches of them into storage, and we get that business advantage from the fact that we actually are able to ship them right away, which is a big change in this industry, which typically has 2-year delivery times.
I understand. So, Roope, you also you are a part of something called Brave Alliance. So you also help founders and help the entrepreneurs with implementation, with growth. And I would like to change a little bit of the topic and go to this area of your work. And I would like to ask you, what do you look for in founders that come for your help? What do you look for in their ideas, and how do you help them?
I look for founders and teams that, well, firstly, who have a diverse background. So especially if you're looking at teams, you have guys with different experiences. Everybody comes from the same mold. It might not be a good idea. We also need different experience levels. So we need young people who have the energy to jump on a problem they have absolutely no idea what it is. And then we have which in many cases in startup business is exactly what you need to do. And then we need to have a little bit of more mature people who can say that might not be the best way to go about it. Just to sort of give a little bit of a depth into the thinking. You of course have to have huge enthusiasm, and probably that's the key question I'm looking at, is if there's this energy in the team that yes, we're going to do this. The people who are practically unable to sit because there's so many things they want to do and they want to get on with it. It helps a lot. So having a team and having the energy to drive stuff is probably the key point. The actual idea, it's in startup business, it's probably not that important because they're going to pivot anyway several times. We've done multiple pivots, maybe not huge ones, maybe only 60 degrees that way and then back this way. But that's the whole idea. That's the part where we talked about trial and error in the beginning. And let's try this, it didn't work. Let's try that, it didn't work. Let's try that. It applies to the technology, the parts, the whole concept. It applies to the business as well. If that customer track doesn't work, let's try this one. So the energy to do that and the ability to jump on problems and start hacking is definitely important. Then in the background,
and
why I mentioned
go on. I'm sorry.
More experienced people is you do need people with contact networks, and usually if you have people who have been working, let's say, in corporate life like myself for 20 years, actually 25, you have a network globally. So if you are thinking about, I need this and that part, or I need somebody to help me out in Japan, you have somebody to call. And that makes a huge difference. I actually did a study a few years ago. We had worked with back in the day we were making mobile phones. We had spin-off companies from the corporation. 407 altogether. We did a study on what's the difference between a startup that's straight out of the university and a startup that is a midlife career change. And you probably heard that startups are successful 1 out of 10 times. That's the university startups, those that are right out of the university. 1 out of 10 is a success. And if you have a midlife career person to starting his company, it's 9 out of 10 success rate. So it It's a huge difference who you know and how you are able to conduct business globally, having those networks. And but sometimes the older people need the younger guys to run for them because they might not be just quite that agile.
So
that's
idealistic
why I talk about a heterogeneous team. You have old, new, young team members. You have engineers, humanists, different kind of education backgrounds. It brings in depth into the analysis, and it happens just by talking together. So that's a good story for a startup. Is a team that's diverse, good contact base, crazy energy, and you're good to go. It might be a good idea.
And what is the
to have some idea?
Biggest red flag?
Phlegmatism. No, if you don't have the energy, it's not going to go anywhere. If you only tend to hire people who are like you, it's going to flop because nobody's going to tell you that you're a complete idiot. It's never going to work. You have to go this way. If everyone's like, yeah, we agree on this, you actually end up hitting your head against the wall somewhere at some point of time, and usually it's the head that breaks, not the wall. So having this diversity or not being able to embrace the diversity is probably the biggest red flag I see.
I understand. Great advice. And talking about advice, what would be the biggest one you could give to a beginner founder right now in 2022? Believe
in your idea and then change it. And then believe really, really hard again. So be ready for changing the idea, but no, you have to go for it, and you have to put your heart in it. Go 110%. You cannot have 50% involvement when you go for an idea, and but be sure that you are flexible, because if you don't find a customer for this idea anywhere, you might be running out of money very soon. But if you but talking to the customers, having this sort of outward reach, they will point the way very easily. People like to help, and you have to trust in goodness of people, and you have to tell them, this is what we do. Don't hold back. If you hold back, they think you don't know about it. And even if you don't know about it, talk to people. They'll tell you how to get your stuff done. And every advice, even if you don't like it, especially the ones you don't like, take heed of. They make the idea and the concept better. Long answer to a short question.
No, that's a perfect answer. Definitely perfect answer. Okay, so my last question for you, because I don't want to take up such a long chunk of your time. What would be one piece of literature or a film or some kind of articles that you could recommend or that inspire you or inspired you and could inspire our members?
Well, I think there are some industry knacks here. In our industry, people tend to look at Star Trek. There is even a
fantastic
research method called the Star Trek method. It goes this way: watch the series and build something they have there. 100 years ago, it was still called the Jules Verne method. He had an idea. You try to figure out how to actually do it. Science fiction for high tech is really inspirational. If you are doing deep sea technologies, watch Leviathan or something like that, where you start wondering could it be done somehow? Half of the physics and everything is all wrong in the movies, but the core idea might be something that triggers the thought, and how could it actually be done?
So actually pop culture.
We are working on Warp Drive then.
Nice. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a fantastic answer. I'm very happy with that answer. Okay.
I don't know how it's going to be done yet, but you can dream. And of course, dream, get ideas and dream some more.
So that's a very idealistic, positive conclusion to our conversation today. Thank you very much, Roope. I'm very happy that we could talk with you and maybe think a little bit more about the space and that actually you can create startups in this industry. So we are very grateful that you decided to come and talk to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.